Hello, so this video will give you tips on finding fallacies in arguments. So let's define some terms first. An argument is a sequence of statements such that some of them, the premises, purport to give reasons to accept another of them, the conclusion. Let's illustrate this with Aristotle's famous syllogism. You may recall this from the textbook. So Aristotle is a man. All men are mortal. Therefore, Aristotle is mortal. So logic there is impeccable. The premises support the conclusion. Not all premises support the conclusions. So for instance, here's something that sounds like a syllogism, but it isn't. Penguins are black and white. Some old TV shows are black and white. Therefore, some penguins or old TV shows. Think of the Venn diagrams you might have studied in high school and the idea of the overlapping circles. Well, the premises here are correct. Penguins are black and white. That's true. Some old TV shows are black and white. But there's no overlap in those circles. There are no penguins who are old TV shows. A fallacy is an argument whose premises fail to support the conclusion. Premises fail to support the conclusion. Okay, and we see fallacies frequently. Why? They offer shortcuts. I love this meme. I don't always know what I'm talking about, but when I do, I learned it from a small sample of anecdotal evidence. The other reason for which we see fallacies a lot is because they're a tool for manipulation. So who wants to manipulate you? Anyone who's trying to convince you of something. Anyone who is trying to sell you something. Okay, I'll give you a recent example, an email I received from a student. Why don't I have a better grade in your class? I'm an English major. So, let's think about this. Try setting up this statement with therefore. I'm an English major, therefore I should have good grades in English. Aha. See, we can clearly see a problem here. And the idea is that getting good grades is a complex process. It takes motivation, it takes effort, it takes skills. Just because you're an English major doesn't mean you have those three things. That is what we call a false cause fallacy. There's not a cause-effect relationship here necessarily. Okay, today's discussion we'll talk about false cause and three other types of fallacies. So fallacy number one. Many children develop signs of autism after getting a vaccine. Clearly, vaccines cause autism. Well, this person is assuming that just because one thing happens after another thing, then that first thing has caused the second thing. In Latin, you call this a post hoc ergo propter hoc, which is a fancy way of saying after this, because of this. And that's not necessarily the case. Just because the two things are correlated or connected does not mean that the first one causes the second. It only means that the first one took place before the second. Okay, how do you spot a false cause fallacy? You set it up with a therefore statement. Should make it easier to show cause-effect. And ask yourself whether other causes and effects besides the ones mentioned could be involved. Fallacy number two. The newspapers reported that a laid-off employee committed suicide. Therefore, to prevent additional suicides, companies should not lay off people. The problem here is that the speaker is assuming that because one laid-off employee committed suicide, it means all laid-off employees committed suicide. Of course, it also assumes that one thing led to another. It's a hasty generalization. The sample size is too small or not representative. And it's also possibly a false cause fallacy. Fallacy number three. Building safer cars has led to increased sales for car manufacturers like Volvo. Therefore, if gun makers come up with safer guns, their sales should also increase. You might remember this from our textbook. There was a discussion question about this article. And as you know, just because safety works for car manufacturers doesn't mean it has to work for gun manufacturers, because you're discussing two very different products. The reasoning is you're comparing actually two things here that are not really comparable. Just as this little picture demonstrates, you're comparing apples and oranges. I buy a car because it's safe, but I may not want to purchase a gun because it's safe. I may look for other characteristics. Differences outweigh the similarities. Okay, fallacy number 4. If we allow assisted suicide to be legal, we will lose respect for all life and allow even people who are not terminally ill to end their life. This is called a slippery slope argument. If we allow A to happen, Z will happen. Therefore, we should not allow A to happen. But that doesn't make sense. You can take measures from stopping Z from occurring. So this is often used in gun control arguments, because people will say something like, okay, if we ban all assault rifles, then the next thing I know, I won't be able to have any guns. But that's not true. That is a slippery slope argument. Okay, a few general comments here. How do you overcome reasoning flaws? First is critical thinking. If you think hard about an argument, you will see flaws in it, possibly. The other way is evidence. Evidence indicates a belief or a proposition is true or valid. Different types of evidence. The first three are probably more effective than personal experience, but personal experience is also a form of evidence. Okay, quick game here, name the fallacy. So, she should marry him. He earned all A's in college. Ooh, that is an example of a false cause, right? Just because he earned A's in college does not mean he's going to be a good person to marry him, to marry, excuse me. Okay, so if you arrange the statement with therefore, you can see this pretty readily. He's a good student, therefore he'll be a good husband. No. In sports as in war, winning is the only thing that matters. Faulty analogy. So ask yourself whether the differences outweigh the similarities. And sports and war are very different things. If we ban the sale of military-style support weapons, the next thing you know, all gun sales will be banned. Slippery slope. Ask yourself whether the second development could be stopped. Finally, people from blank are mean. Hasty generalization, right? You need to ask yourself whether a small size is truly representative of an entire population. All right, that's it. Thank you for watching.